Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of FBC's The Table podcast. This season is titled Seeds of Eden, and will dive into practical Christian living and how anyone can make a difference in the lives of those around them. On today's episode, you will hear from Tanner Moore, Todd Warren, Sean Decker, and Ryan Froese. Thank you for joining us at The Table.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another round of The Table, another conversation here as we talk about the Garden of Eden and planting seeds of Eden and living as a Christian, you know, like we talked about last time, in the middle of that accessible Eden and the full Eden, and what do we do in the middle? And so let's start off again. So I'll just kind of introduce everybody. If you listen to episode 1, we've got the same crew here. Episode 2, we got Sean, Todd, and Ryan over here to my left, and I'm Tanner, and excited to get right here into season or episode 2, season 2, episode 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
We can give a shout out to our producers today. I think we didn't do that in episode 1.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've got Otis Johnson and Sherry Warren making us look as good as possible. They're not miracle workers, but they're helping us out, putting scripture up on the wall.
That's right.
Appreciate them for being here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, not to put you on the spot here, but give us just a little recap of our first episode there, kind of maybe something that stood out to you, and maybe just a little summary.
Okay, yeah, we talked about in Genesis the Eden, and how it was a place where God dwelt with man, and it was perfect, and things were as they were intended to be, as God intended them to be. And we talked about a river that flowed from Eden, that split into 4 different rivers that gave life to the world. That's right. Essentially.
Yep.
And so from there we kind of related it to we talked about the fall and how we were separated from the presence of God in Eden through sin, and then kind of we looked at John, where John shows a picture of that same kind of image of blood and water flowing out of Jesus and his crucifixion, and giving life to mankind again, and kind of bringing humanity back into a relationship with God, where we can be with God again. I think one of the things that stood out most to me, that I took from it most, was just how we talked about how Eden was a place, but it was also an idea, and how we as believers are, I guess, intended to, and this was kind of just towards the end of it, but intended to bring that that heaven to earth, I guess, and help to restore what was broken,
right,
when we were exiled from,
and we're gonna try to get into that a little bit in this episode as well. And so let's, another question to start us off here, Sean. Have you experienced any Eden spots like that before in your life, in your faith, in your walk? What's an Eden spot? A place where man and God are together, and relationships are restored.
Yeah. So I think several times, I remember growing up, we'd go to church camp every summer. And I went to Falls Creek, and so we took our kids this last summer to Falls Creek, and it's one of my favorite places on the planet. And I think not necessarily because of the location, because but it was a week set aside to, and we didn't have cell phones back then, so that wasn't really a thing. Didn't have to worry about my Nokia, leaving it, whatever. But it was a place to put things aside and distractions and really spend time with God.
Yeah.
And I think as an adult, kind of the same situation. I went on a walk to Emmaus, and then I've worked several since then.
Yeah.
And the location that we go to is not necessarily pretty.
Yeah.
But just kind of spending 3 days with God away from work and distractions, things that might. Yeah. So I think that's some of my closest moments with God. I think where when I did that.
It sounds like you're talking about whenever you're able to get away from the day to day is when you're able to experience that a little bit. Ryan, have you found that to be true for yourself? And speak to that a little bit, if so.
Yeah, you mentioned Walk to Emmaus, so immediately thought about like Chrysalis that I went on, and it got me to thinking because this is
and Walk to Emmaus that you sent me on.
Yes,
which was cool.
Yeah.
There's just something about intentionally, like putting everything away, where you have no focus other than God.
Yeah.
There something happens there, and it doesn't have to be at, the
Right.
place.
Yeah.
It can be anywhere.
It
and
can be
with
on a lake
anybody. It
with
can
a
be
fishing
on a
rod.
lake. Absolutely. Honestly, this sounds crazy because we live in West Texas and there's hardly any trees. I'm not going to go down that road.
Okay.
But I've sat in a tree stand by myself with the sun coming up
Yeah.
and just had the greatest experience with God before.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like it brings me to tears because that was like an Eden spot for me.
Yeah.
Even though it was on a telephone pole, not on a tree.
Right. Yeah.
My wife's uncle is he's a lineman, and so at our lease we put a telephone pole in so I could put a tree stand.
There
up.
you go.
Anyway.
That's awesome.
But that is like one of the best experiences I ever had, and it was 6:00 in the morning in Sweetwater, Texas,
Yeah.
by myself. But and I think it's just intentionality.
I was sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
you're good.
So last summer, this made me think of this. So one of our favorite places is in Colorado, and I'm not very good, but we love to fly fish. And so last summer, we don't miss many Sundays around here. I'm glad now that Todd's back.
Yeah.
I feel like I can miss more, and it's good. But last summer I was gone over a Sunday, and Sunday morning when church was happening here, I was waist deep in the river.
Yeah.
I didn't catch anything, but it was the same thing, right? And so it wasn't a church experience. It wasn't something pre-planned or not scripted, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there was definitely communion with God in that moment.
And so why don't we experience that just in the everyday, this is where I live, this is my routine and my schedule. Why don't we live in that perpetually?
You want me to admit it?
Yeah, go for it.
Stuff happens, and you get busy, and then people make you mad, and then you don't bring Eden.
Yeah.
Then you bring something else.
Yeah.
You
Because we live in a world with other people. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And schedules and to-do lists and right.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Just it feels like in a lot of ways the world that we live in is the opposite of that Eden ideal. Yeah. And do you see that at all in the world that we live in, the culture we live in, the 21st century America? What are some ways that our world and our culture is the opposite of that Eden ideal?
It's like constant striving.
Yep. No peace. No Sabbath.
Yeah. For more.
Yeah.
For better.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Something we didn't talk about the last time is that part of the Eden idea and Eden ideal is the Sabbath, right? That God rested on the seventh day right after he made man. Then we get Genesis 2, God makes man, he puts him in the garden and says, work it. You can put two and two together and say that, Okay, and then God rests, right? That's part of his making of man, is that God rests. And so God doesn't rest because he's tired. I know I say this a lot, but God didn't have to rest because he was tired of his work and he needed to recover. The other reason you might rest is because you're finished. God rested because he was done. And it was okay to just settle in and be, right? If my wife is listening to this right now, she's like, Tanner, do you listen to yourself talk? Because I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at that.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of times I get just swept away in that part of our culture that says, go, do, more. It's not enough, bigger, better. And so that's the question for episode 2 here is, what's the opposite of Eden? And the Bible has an answer for that. There is a place that is also an idea. Just like Eden is a place that is also an idea, the opposite of Eden is a place that is also an idea. And we first find it in Genesis chapter 11. So let's go there, Genesis chapter 11, and I think that this story is crafted purposefully to show a lot of things that are the opposite of Eden as we do it. So let's read here, Genesis chapter 11. Let's go the first 9 verses. Ryan, let's start with you in this episode. Why don't you read first 9 verses there?
Now the whole. Sorry, let me retry that.
All right.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar.
I'm gonna stop you right there just for a second. Let's do this kind of bit by bit on this one. Okay, so they moved where?
East.
Eastward.
To the east.
And they found what?
A plain.
What is the opposite of a mountain?
A plain.
A plain. Flatland.
Yeah.
There's where we're familiar with. So you know what plains look like.
Yeah.
So you're saying we live in the opposite of the mountain.
I'm saying that if you wanted to find a place that was the opposite of beautiful, you might look at the plains of Iran or West Texas. Okay, so the opposite geography of a mountain, a plain. And now they said to each other, let's do what?
Make bricks,
Yep.
bake them thoroughly.
What's a mountain made out of?
Stone.
Yeah, and so what are these people using?
Stone again.
Yeah, manufactured stone, man-made rocks, right? They're using human-made materials, not the materials that God used to build a mountain, but man-made materials to do something in place of stone. Now, short disclaimer: if you live in a brick house, I'm not saying that you live that you're wrong. Okay,
So
I'm not saying that it's wrong.
Natural stone only
Yeah.
for everything you live in.
That's exactly, yeah. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I just think that the story's written this way to make the bells be going off in our heads. Hey, this is the opposite of what we saw at the beginning. Okay, I'm sorry. I cut you off. Start off right there in verse 4.
Then they said, "Come, let us build a city." Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to retry that again.
It's all right. As many as you need. There is grace here. This is how we fight our battles. Inside joke.
Oh, that's awesome. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. And the Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city.
All right, I'm going to pause you there again for a second here. Okay, so now we get the purpose of their baking bricks and using tar for mortar. What are they building?
A city for themselves.
A city with a tower in it. And
Monument.
what's the tower supposed to do?
Show their greatness.
Let us make a name for ourselves.
That's right. We're going to make a name for ourselves. And the tower's going to go where?
That reaches heaven.
We're going to build a tower that climbs all the way into the heavens. And it's going to be in our city. Now, mountains are God-made, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about cities? What are cities?
Man-made.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. But they're trying to arrive at the same spot. Ultimately, Eden is a place where heaven and earth are connected. Now, it's a God-made place, right? Where heaven and earth are connected. But here, in Genesis 11, the people are trying to build a bridge into heaven, a bridge between heaven and earth, for whose glory, for whose gain, and for what purpose?
Their own.
Their own what?
Their own glory.
Yeah, okay.
For their own name.
Yeah, for their own, to build their own name,
Mm-hmm.
to make their own name, and to be able to climb into heaven. Right? This is an assault. This is an invasion attempt. Humans are trying to invade heaven. You see,
Hmm.
you see how arrogant this is?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go a little bit further here. Your verse 9 right there.
That is why it's called Babel. Because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth.
All right. So one more little tidbit here, and this Hebrew word in verse 9, that is why it was called in Hebrew Bavel. Bavel. Now that word in the Bible appears hundreds of times through the Old Testament. Bavel. And every single time except one, it gets translated what?
Babylon.
That's right. Babylon. We've been through this before. It gets translated. There's only one place that Bavel does not get translated Babylon, and it's right here. It gets translated Babel. Now, maybe it's a pun, sure, but I think it's a pun at best. I think that the author here really wants us to think of the actual city called Babylon. This is an origin story of the city of Babylon. Now, I'm going to go a little world history on us for a second. One of my favorite classes to teach, I'm a social studies teacher, is world history. I love teaching world history. And one of my favorite things to do is to read some of the different creation stories from the people in the ancient Near East and compare them. And so if you read the Babylonian creation story, Babylonian Genesis, if you will, it's called Enuma Elish. Anybody read Enuma Elish before? Okay. So Enuma Elish is about the Babylonian god named Marduk. And I'll spare you the details, but basically what happens is Marduk, whenever he finishes conquering the evil god Tiamat, he decides that he's going to build a city for the gods to live. And so he builds a city with a tower that reaches up to the heavens where he can live, and it's kind of like his own dwelling place. And he calls the city the Gateway of the Gods, or Babylon. Okay, this is a part of the Babylonian creation story. And then he makes people to do all of the gods' chores, because the gods want to be able to rest and relax. And so humans exist to do all of the gods' chores that they don't want to do. And the existence of the city called Babylon is built by Marduk, the god, as a link between heaven and earth. Then you have Genesis come along, and Genesis chapter 11 says, actually, Babylon was not built by gods. Babylon was built by people. Babylon is actually the exact opposite of what the Babylonians say that it is. It is no bridge between heaven and earth. It is a monument to human rebellion. Babylon is the place where humans try to climb into heaven on their own. Babylon is the place where humans try to declare independence from God. And here's the scary part of it, to me, is that God takes a look at it and he says, we better stop this because the humans will be successful. In other words, humans have the capacity to destroy themselves. If humans want to declare independence from God and cut themselves off from the source of life and try to manufacture Eden on their own, humans can do it. What's the problem if you cut yourself off from that river that flows from Eden?
It'll never be as it should have been.
I would agree with that, but I think it's worse.
Die.
You die. Yeah, if you cut yourself off from the source of life.
Okay.
In other words, humans can build themselves into their own graves. And so God says, we can't let the people do this. When I read this story, I read it as an act of grace, of God saying, these humans are about to self-destruct, and they're going to succeed. We've got to stop this. So he puts an end to the building of the tower. And he scatters the people. And that's God saying, I don't want humans to destroy themselves. Now, the place stands as a monument to what humans are capable of. This is the opposite of Eden. And the place is Babylon. Right? So let's talk about what the opposite of Eden means. What is a man-made attempt to build Eden? Let's speculate for a little bit. Go ahead.
You're talking about like in a physical sense, or
Yeah, I'm
or
talking like just in a real world.
the first thing
What
I
does this
think
look
of
like?
is politics,
Okay.
because people have
Without
tried.
without losing half of our listeners, which is like 12 people probably.
The first thing I think of is like socialism, for example,
Okay.
because I think the idea behind socialism is like this utopian society
Okay.
where everybody shares.
Yeah.
There's no poor, there's no rich, and everybody pitches in and creates a society in which there is like no need.
Sounds Eden-like.
It does sound Eden-like, and I've always thought of that
Uh-huh.
because the idea of socialism sounds wonderful,
Yeah.
but we just aren't very good at it.
Also true from history.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I'm going to steer us on the other side of the aisle. No pun intended. But yeah, I like what you have to say there. But what else? What are some man-made attempts to manufacture Eden? What does it look like? Maybe not in a giant philosophy or, yeah.
I was just thinking this this idea of kind of living your own truth.
Yeah.
Whatever you think your life should be, then that's fine. You live, you marry, you call it whatever you want to do. You live your life the way you think you should live it, and that's fine. So in a way, you be your own God.
Because you're going to have community with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Because you're going to finally be at peace, because you'll be able to be who you truly are,
Yeah.
or express yourself the way you want to be. These are the Eden promises, right? Community, peace, presence of God, right? Like you said, you get to be God, which means you are the presence of God. So you're promised all of the things that Eden is promised. but it's independent of Yahweh, God, right? The God that we worship. And so what's the end result of that?
Failure to do it.
Yeah, it's gonna self-destruction, right? The man-made attempts to create Eden result almost always in some type of a self-destruction.
Well, and
Go
God, what God said, when I first read that, when you, let's see, the end of verse 6, when it said, after this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them, or they will succeed. And I was like, wait, they'll succeed in building a tower to God? No, I think they will succeed in their own destruction.
Yeah.
So in a way, you are succeeding at your plan.
Yeah.
But the plan is to be opposite of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, how many people, and I just go back to, of course, I grew up in America. I think of American society. And so how many people are succeeding at the American dream, but utterly unhappy? I think
that are getting that more.
Yeah. Because there's so many people, they've succeeded.
Yeah.
They have the American dream.
Yeah.
They have everything that America has promised, yet are just completely unhappy. I think there's a large group of people that are that way in our society because they're looking for the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome that gives them their dream, if you will.
Yeah. Great point. What else? What does it look like to try to manufacture Eden apart from God, or a man-made attempt to create Eden?
Well, it's just it's vain attempts at. It's hard for me to get away from what Sean was saying. Like, everybody has their own idea of what, like, how to achieve peace or how to achieve power or prosperity, whatever that is to them.
Right.
And so they're all vain attempts at those things, and that will end in self-destruction, like you said.
And so throughout the story, what we see is the rise of many Babylons. And the first Babylon that rises after the actual place called Babylon is in Exodus chapter 1. And instead, we could go there and read it, but I'll just kind of tell you about it. And so we have the Egyptians who decide to build cities with brick and tar for mortar, which is the only other time in the Bible that shows up, right? Those building materials. And the purpose for they're building store cities so they can store all of their extra food. They're trying to hoard food, right? Is the idea. And I mean, if you think about it, in a lot of ways, that's what we try to do when we're trying to gain, right? It's just hoard things that help us survive, hoard resources. That's what the Egyptians are doing. And so they're trying to create their own Eden, where they have everything that they could ever want, where there's no need for real hard labor or work, where there's peace and they can plan and there's community and there's wellness, but the only way that they can achieve it is by enslaving a group of people, forcing them into slave labor, which means for some people is the opposite. It's hell, right? For the Israelites, living in Egypt is hell. So it's not Eden for everyone. It's only Eden for the elite Egyptians, and especially for Pharaoh. And God finally has enough of it, and he says, okay, you want to have a contest to really get to see who's God? It's not you, it's me. And Pharaoh goes to his own death, his own self-destruction, right? You keep going, and who is the bad guy of the story of the Old Testament? Who's the one that comes and destroys the temple and carries the Hebrews off into exile? Babylon. And this time, Babylon itself is Babylon, both physically and metaphorically, if that makes sense. Babylon is both the place and the idea in that time. And do you remember the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they get thrown into a fiery furnace? But do you remember why They're thrown into a furnace.
Because they refuse to bow down
To what?
to the image of Nebuchadnezzar.
Do you remember what the image looks like, Daniel chapter 2? We don't get any details except this. It's 90 cubits tall and 9 cubits wide. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like a tower to me.
Kind of sounds like and every time you hear the flute, the zither, the harp, the lyre, and all the kinds of musical instruments, Daniel chapter 2, all of the peoples of all the languages and tongues of the world are to fall down and worship the image. What is Nebuchadnezzar trying to do? Well, Genesis 11, what
yeah.
happens to people?
Well, they scatter, and their languages are scattered.
And now Daniel 2, what's Nebuchadnezzar doing?
Bringing them back.
Bringing them back, yeah.
To worship the tower.
Yeah.
So, just in case you didn't get right, that the author was trying to show you that, hey, Babylon is the Babylon, both literally and metaphorically. We get the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The reason why they get thrown into the furnace, they don't bow down and worship. But I think it's more than that. It's because they don't join in the worship of the tower, in the worship of the man-made Eden, where humans get to try and become and then Babylon's rise and fall throughout the story of the Bible, right? And it's not just the city of Babylon. Sometimes it's the city of, like we said, it's the Egyptians. In fact, in the book of Revelation, the city of Jerusalem is called Babylon at one point. We get the Romans that are referred to as Babylon at one point. Peter calls them Babylon. At least there's some debate there, but most people think that Peter's talking about Rome when he says that the one in Babylon sends you greetings. And so many Babylons rise through the story. And Babylon does not necessarily mean major city, right? It's not just that if you live in a city, you're evil. It means that this is an attempt for humans to create Eden outside of Eden, or apart from God, apart from the source of life. This is artificial Eden. And artificial Eden is not peace. It's artificial peace, and it ends in death. It's artificial community, and it ends in death. Here's the major problem with Babylons. What do Babylonians, I'm not talking about the actual city now, but the idea, what do Babylonians tend to do to Eden people?
Make them less than.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, if you're, I mean, in terms of Pharaoh
Yeah.
in Egypt, like that was the laborers. They were the ones put into slavery to build, to build the great city or to build the monument.
Mm-hmm.
So they're considered second class.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep going. You're right on the money. What do Babylons tend to do?
They hoard
Yeah.
because they don't trust God for their future.
Yeah. And whenever one person hoards double resources, what does that mean for their neighbor normally?
Typically, they're going without.
Yeah. If somebody has twice as much, somebody else has nothing. Babylons tend to hoard, which means that there are people out there that are neglected, right?
Yeah.
So Babylons, they create the second class caste system. Babylons cause others to go without, or they neglect, and they, kind of force. You could almost call it into a type of poverty, right? Other people, because of the hoarding of resources. What else? What do Babylons tend to do to? I said to Eden people, but really just to all people.
Persecute whoever doesn't agree with or believe the same thing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Babylons tend to crush people. And they normally crush themselves under their own weight, but Babylons normally end up crushing people, right? We opened this episode up with, so why do we not get to? We talked about those Eden places, right? On a telephone pole at the sunrise, and all I thought of, in John's Gospel, whenever Philip tells Nathanael, we found the Messiah, he's from Nazareth. And Nathanael says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? I almost said, could anything good come out of Sweetwater? Because I almost feel the same about that. But oh my goodness, and I've totally lost my train of thought now. Because I was thinking about this time in Sweetwater when we were in a coach's box. And anyway, long story we don't have time to get into. But that was a bonding moment for the two of us, I feel like.
I think so.
Yeah. Thought we were going to get beat up in the home side stands.
So not an Eden experience.
Not an Eden experience. That's right. But I asked, so how come we don't get to experience that just in the everyday, day to day? And I think that part of it is because there are Babylons, and you might even say, in some way, that we live in a Babylon. And I'm not trying to call America evil, and I don't want to go that path. Although America and American culture has done plenty of evil, and is right there today in the 21st century, on the forefront of inventing evil in a lot of ways. But maybe one of the reasons why we don't just experience that Eden is because, and the reason we have to get away, to go climb a telephone pole, to go to a church camp, is because we kind of live in Babylon, right? Mm. And so we have to try to withdraw from time to time to get away from it. And so here is the kind of the conclusion to Babylon's journey. In the last episode, we talked about how the end of the Bible, Revelation 22, closes with a picture of Eden restored for all of creation. Mm-hmm. But in order for Eden to be restored, Revelation chapter 18, okay? So in order for that to happen, we get this episode here, Revelation chapter 18. And this is a great celebration. Todd, why don't you read Revelation 18 verse, let's just do the first 3 verses. How about?
After this I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living.
All right. And so if the Bible ends in this great scene of Eden being restored, we could also say that it ends with the fall of Babylon, right? Mm-hmm. The fall of that man-made Eden, right? Why is that like a necessary direction that we as Christians believe that God is taking us? Why is the fall of Babylon, and I'm talking in the idea sense, why is that necessary?
They can't coexist.
What can't coexist?
Babylon and Eden.
Okay. They're the opposite of each other. You either have true peace, true community, fellowship with God, or you have the artificial one that you make as humans.
Yeah.
But the very existence of Babylon says that I don't want the Eden. I want my own. And so I think we've arrived at kind of the central question to our series here, and that is, what do Eden people do when they live in
Mm.
Babylon.
Mm.
How does an Eden person live in Babylon?
Different.
And that's the question for us to ask and to try to answer. What do you mean different?
Well, you just think of the story that you talked about with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Mm-hmm.
They were not like everybody else.
Mm.
They stood out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many other stories that you can go through the Old Testament, wherever else, where Eden people, if you will, stood out
Mm-hmm.
and were different
Mm-hmm.
than the Babylon that they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was visible to everybody around them.
Yeah.
They didn't look like everybody else. They didn't live like everybody else. The people that knew them knew they were different.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. I want to go back to something that you said, Ryan, when I said, how come we don't experience this Eden all the time? And you said, because other people do something and it makes me mad, because I got a schedule, because I'm busy, because, right? It's kind of like what you mentioned there.
Thank you for repeating that.
Yeah. It sounded like maybe that connected with you a little bit.
Well, I immediately also thought, I also make other people mad. And so, like, in the already but not yet that we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
what about the Babylon in me?
Mm.
You know, just like the
Yeah.
things of this world, the pursuits and the passions
Mm-hmm.
that I need to identify
Yeah.
in order to be a part of, or maybe more effectively,
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the word that really stands out to me, is that there's like this tension
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're an Eden person but you live in Babylon, because the pull of Babylon is pulling you this way, and the call of Eden pulls you this way, and you live in tension constantly between that person who makes me mad and that grace that calls me to forgive. And you live in that tension of that schedule I need to keep and the person that I, like you said, that I've made mad, that I've offended, and the need for forgiveness. And so there's this constant tension that Eden people, I think, feel and experience and live in when you live in a world like we live in a world of Babylon. Am I onto something there? Have you experienced that tension in your life, or what do you think? Is that real?
Yeah. I mean, I think, Todd hit it on the nail on the head there, that, I mean, we're all we're all believers around this table.
Yeah.
Yet we all try, we all are aiming at success in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's what we do for a living or with our family or whatever, which isn't bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's we're trying to be smart with what God has given us and how He has gifted us that.
Yeah.
Yet, that's sometimes it still does creep in. The Babylon in me creep in with how I comparing myself to someone else, or wanting nothing is ever good enough, or always wanting the next thing, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very real.
Yeah.
you talked about hoarding in Babylon, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and it's like those are like they're hoarding good things
Yeah.
that they've made ultimate things to pursue.
Yeah.
Where just an example, if I have double food and he has none,
Yeah.
right? That's a good, like, food is a good thing.
Food is good.
Or
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
it is. Like, maybe part of the seeds of Eden,
Mm-hmm.
is just, I don't know, taking our influence in those good things, not making them ultimate things, and
And sharing them with the people who don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't just mean preaching the gospel to people, like sharing the good news of Jesus. That means like maybe sharing food with people,
Yeah.
like real food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or or you could save money, or whatever kind of good thing. There's a reason why we give our money, right? To the generous buckets in our church, and to the church, and to missions, and because we want to share what we've been given, we believe, by God, with other people, right? And maybe it looks like that. Did I cut you off?
When I think about community rehab, that's something that we've been a part of, and we did this last summer. We've done it several times, and that's the whole deal, because you have people who are going out in the community, and it wouldn't be considered fun by most standards, what we're doing, and some of it's dirty and stinky or whatever, but the ultimate goal is not so we can pat ourselves on the back like in Babel, like let's make ourselves famous, but it's this person has a hard time getting down the stairs at their house, so let me go build them a ramp. Not so I can be famous, but so that they'll know that there's something greater in me, and I want you to know about that.
And I hope that as Sean is talking there, us at the table, and if you're listening, I hope that what you can see is the reason why we've kind of explored these ideas, these theories, in a practical Christian living series, is exactly what you said there, is because when you understand the biblical concepts of Eden and Babylon, you start to see those concepts in your day-to-day. And then you're forced with practical decisions and practical situations that you have to choose. Am I going to plant an Eden seed here? Or am I going to build a Babylon tower? Am I going to take this brick and put it in the tower? Or am I going to dig a hole and plant a seed? And that is the tension that I think we all feel. Let me read. I was reminded of this passage in the book of Romans chapter 7, and I just want to see if you relate to this ever. Romans 7, starting in verse 15. I do not understand what I do.
Yes.
For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. You feel that at all? Can you relate? Boy, I can. And I think that as we start to introduce this idea of the tension is that, as you're listening in, us here at the table and those who are listening, if you feel that tension, like me too, us too, that's where we all are right now, is in that tension of, I know the good I want to do, and I know the evil I don't want to do. And I want to only do the good, but I keep on sometimes not doing it. I keep on doing the thing I don't want to do. And I'm wrestling this whole time in this tension of, boy, I want to be this ideal. And I don't want to be this destructive. And I find myself most times somewhere in the middle. And just like we are living somewhere in between that accessible Eden and realized Eden, I find myself oftentimes somewhere in between that Eden gardener and Babylonian builder. And that tension is where is the reason I'm saying this is that if you feel that tension, you're not doing it wrong.
That's
right?
good.
Like you're not failing. If you're in that tension, that's where you're supposed to be. That means you're wrestling it. That means you're aware of what you're supposed to be doing and you're fighting for it, and you're not perfect at it, and neither am I, and neither are any of us, but you're in the tension. And what I think we'll see from now to the end of this series is that living in the tension of the in-between is where we have been called to live. And if you feel yourself being pulled in two directions, you're probably in the right spot.
That's good.
If you feel yourself being pulled in two ways, you're probably in the middle of something. You're probably a bridge between two things. You probably have that one hand on earth and that one hand in heaven, and you're being pulled both directions, and that makes you some type of a bridge between the two. And maybe that's what we're supposed to be, in the middle, in the tension. Thoughts to close us up right here. What do you think?
That made me think about, and I think it was last season when you were talking about when, was it when Jacob wrestled with God? Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And he refused to let up.
Yep. Refused to let go.
And I think you talked about that. Like that's the point. The point is in the wrestling.
Yeah.
The striving and that he didn't give up. I mean, yes, he was wrestling with God, and I think that's what God. I think you even said that. That's what God wants us to do.
Yeah. That's right.
I think that's the point. And I think we live in a world that we want it to be easy, and we want things to come naturally. And our youngest son, Grayson, he just turned 11, and he's one of the most competitive people I've ever met. And so when things aren't super easy right at first, sometimes he tends to get really discouraged. And I think we can all relate to that in a lot of ways, right?
Because I want to win.
Yeah, yeah. And so, because I think that's our nature, not from God, but that's our nature maybe from Babylon, that, we want things to be easy and we want things to be comfortable. And I think God is saying, that's not really it.
Yeah.
So I think it is in the wrestling. It's good.
Yeah, in the tension. The tension. Any other ideas there? Any other thoughts?
I just think of, obviously my life right now is consumed with a few things. Trying to raise 5 kids.
Yeah.
And then,
You could end there.
yeah. And that's a challenge all on its own.
Yeah.
Just from the sheer numbers, but also just seeing how there's different ways to raise your kids. You can do it many different ways. Some of them are easier.
Yeah.
But the easier ways are usually worse for them. One of the things I think about is like how they eat, their diet. Like it's easy to give them a bowl of cereal in the morning.
I just drove through McDonald's for mine, so
and
careful what you say.
And it's so bad for them if you know anything about that.
Yeah.
And how much better an egg or whatever is in the morning for them, and how it affects their mood the rest of the day. And then like the hardest part with that many kids is you just don't have peace ever unless they're asleep. They're asleep, you get a little bit of peace. You just don't ever have it. Unless you want to.
Yeah.
Because you can give them an iPad and a video game console.
Yeah.
And then you will have peace for hours. But that's terrible for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like this constant battle between, do I want it to be easy or do I want to
be good?
Do I want to face the battles? Because there's battles there every single day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think about. Same thing like in my career, at my job. There's struggles and battles that you face because you're trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
Whereas if you just ignored it, your life would be easier. But it's not better. And so that, to me, that's really difficult. But and that resonates with me. You're talking about how maybe you're in the right place because if I just think about how my life has gone. The fact that you say that maybe that's it, being in the right place makes me feel like, okay, maybe I'm not screwing everything up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there is just constant tension.
And that tension is maybe where we're supposed to be. And Todd, I don't know if I cut you off there, if you wanted to, any closing thoughts?
I just love the picture you gave about being a bridge between the two.
Yeah.
and realizing, like, I mean, you've got one hand in heaven and one in or Eden and Babylon.
Yeah.
And we can pull out of Babylon, but we're all, I mean, believers, we're all there together. I mean, we're all fighting that same pull and that same tension and those same struggles. And and there's comfort in knowing that that your brothers around you or sisters around you are fighting that and
being stretched the same way. Yeah, and feeling the same way. And I want to share with you a quote to close us that hopefully can open us the next time, and something that we can talk about at length. But I heard it the other day. It says, "The goal of life is not to arrive safely at death." And I heard that, man, and I mean, you guys who know me, it's like, man, that's just, I feel like I live my life that way, you know. But I love that. The goal of life is not to arrive safely at death. And life as a Christian is the same way. The goal of life in Christ is not to arrive safely at death. And if you feel yourself in the middle of something, in the middle of that pull, in the middle of the tension, I like what you said, Ryan. Just because it might be hard, but it's good. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's going to be good. And maybe as Christians, we're supposed to make a little noise in the middle, right? Not in the Westboro Baptist Church type of a way.
Right.
Not that kind of noise.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're supposed to build some bridges that are under some strain. Let's wrap that one up right here, and we'll land it there for this time, and then we'll pick up with this conversation again the next time. Cool. Thanks, guys. It was good.
It's good.
Good.
Thanks for listening to FBC Seminoles, The Table Podcast. A new episode will be released each Monday. We invite you to pull up a chair and join our table each week as we dig into God's Word together. We would love for you to join one of our Connect groups that meets throughout the week and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. If you'd like more information, you can call our church office at 432-758-3291 or visit our website at fbcseminole.org.